I have a question. Does a film that has 4 Golden Globes, 13 Oscar nominations, and other praises and awards mean it's good? I'm talking about Emilia Perez here, and obviously the answer is no. Not at all, and clearly so. I think it just means that the odds that a lot of people like it are going to be very, very high. The odds are going to be very high. But that's not the case with this film, Emilia Perez. And so what went wrong? And does it actually deserve all of its awards and nominations? That question, personally, is kind of hard to answer because I basically like, at least a little bit, every single movie that I watch. It's not very often that I have to stop watching a movie at the beginning or in the middle. I typically can make it to the end, and I typically say, at the very least, it was good. It was good. I mean, not every film leaves me like super impressed and like gushing about it at the end, but I at least can say that it was good. And I figure the reason for that is because the most important part of a film to me is the storytelling. And not just the visual storytelling, but what the story is, how the story progresses, what it's about, and how we get from the beginning to the end. And maybe I think that the storytelling is the most important part to me is because I am a creative writer and a creative writer by education, and plots simply resonate with me. And I'm not here to debate, even though I asked the question, whether it deserved its nominations, because I am no expert in, cinematography, and I have yet to see all of the Best Picture nominees, so I cannot compare this film, Emilia Perez, to its competition. But I'm here to speak on why this film is a perfectly fine piece of art that at first I couldn't believe was this divisive, but the more I research, the more it actually kind of made sense to me. Emilia Perez, 2024, written by Jacques Audiard, Thomas Bidigan, and Leah Maisous. Sorry if I pronounce this wrong. My French is not good in the slightest. And it is also directed by Jacques Audiard. It is described by Netflix as an operatic odyssey, and IMDb gives it the genres pop musical, comedy, crime, drama, musical again, and thriller. If you don't know, Emilia Perez is about Manitas del Monte, a cartel leader who transitions to Emilia Perez, a leader, or the leader of La Lucecita, an organization that helps find missing people. Before transitioning, Emilia decides to leave her wife, Jessie, and her kids and her business behind to live the life that she's always wanted to have since she was a child, according to her. But eventually, Emilia realizes she can't live without her family anymore, and she finds the lawyer that helped her fake her death and become Emilia. She finds that lawyer and tells her, I need your help. I need you to bring my family back to me, which is exactly what happens. But when Emilia makes the mistake of claiming the kids are hers, her life falls completely apart. Just a heads up, the rest of this video does have spoilers, so if you have not watched the film yet or you don't want to be spoiled, you can go ahead and pause here and come back at a time that you are ready. According to my research, Audiard's films are often tragic, so in retrospect, it is not surprising at all that Emilia, Jessie, and Gustavo, an additional character, die at the end. But this is something that upsets a lot of people, the fact that Emilia died. I believe the aspect of a trans character dying in the end falls under harmful tropes, so I got curious. I saw that many of Audiard's films contain minority characters of sorts, Muslim, deaf, Sri Lankan, and so on. So it begs the question. I got curious, and I was like, well, is it a thing that Jacques Audiard does? Does he kind of intentionally write characters that he intends to have bad things happen to? Or is it just the nature of the, tragic film culture that his films just have tragedy in them anyway, and he is instead just bringing marginalized or minority characters to the screen, which otherwise might not get as much screen time as he has given them. I think there is a possibility of either one, or even sort of a mix of both, and I think it's definitely something to consider if you have seen more of Jacques Audiard's work. However, I have not. So in this video, I'm going to speak about Emilia Perez as its own thing, as a standalone thing, because I don't have the knowledge to compare. I don't have the knowledge to compare Emilia Perez to any of his other work. So I'm curious, though, if you have noticed a pattern in his work, if you are a fan of his work, if this is something that you think he is doing intentionally to harm these groups, or if it is something of his culture, which I think is just very, very, very possible. So one of the main critiques and criticisms and dislikes of this film is its representation of trans people. This, obviously, I am not in the trans community, nor am I in the LGBTQ plus community, so it is not a subject that I can speak directly on. It's not a subject that I can relate directly to. However, trans people are definitely a marginalized group. They are a minority, and I myself am a minority. So I do know what it is like to be in a group that is a minority, and I know what it is like to be in a group that is disliked by other people, and I can speak on those specific experiences, and so I will just do comparisons on the level of being a minority, and not exactly as at the level of being, or at the experience of being trans, or even part of that community. So I would like to read from the internet some things that I found, some reviews that I found, because I personally think most of the arguments I've seen for trans representation have not been as strong, personally, as I would like an argument to be if you are calling a film bad. So, for example, I looked up what transphobic tropes are, because I saw a lot of people say that it does not represent trans people well, and it perpetuates stereotypes and transgender tropes. And so I looked into that, and it led me to an example of what transgender tropes are, and then other things as well, which I will start with. I found this subreddit. It's the subreddit Ask Transgender, and it has 344,000 members. So I would think that it's a pretty diverse spectrum of transgender people and people who have curiosities about this group and who want to approach things respectfully, so they go to people who can answer their questions respectfully. And I found this post. It is from 3 years ago, and it says, "Ladies, what tropes do you most hate in stories about trans women?" I've been working on a novel script for about a decade now. Main cast has a trans girl as a character. When I started the story, her getting bullied for her transness was a plot point. I know, big cringe. I've since grown as a person, and I learned more about trans issues, as well as come to terms with my own gender identity. Needless to say, that's no longer a plot point. Still looking to learn and improve on the story though, since I'm not trans femme myself. So, what kind of tropes and story beats do you absolutely hate in media trying to portray you? I want to avoid any more cringe in the story, so answers would be greatly appreciated. So, here are some things that people said in the comments. The part where the male romantic interest throws up when he finds out the partner is trans and then refers to them as he for the rest of the story. This did not happen in our film. Now, in Emilia Perez, it is not revealed that she lets anybody know that she is trans, and she does end up having a relationship with a woman, but it is not revealed whether she says or reveals or confides in her girlfriend that she is trans. And the next comment says, being straight. More often it feels like trans women in fiction are just ex-feminine gay men, you know, like drag queens who happen to do. Or saying that they are trans by telling, "I'm in fact a dude," while peeing in a urinal, aka the men's restroom, in a very manly voice, you know, like drag queens. In fact, you should watch the Netflix documentary Disclosure about botched trans representation in movies and TV shows. So this one just seems like something I saw before, like man in a dress. And Emilia Perez, I would argue, when I watched the film, as someone who's not in the community, I don't look at Emilia as a man in a dress. And I would hope that others would too, and you wouldn't look at Emilia and think like, oh, she's just a man who decided to dress in drag. Like, I think it is far more than that. The next comment, aside from obvious examples of transphobic tropes, man in a dress, dangerous sexual predator, etc., which we don't see in Emilia Perez, avoid making your story tragedy porn. Much of the so-called good media featuring trans characters paints us as these deeply troubled characters, which Emilia is not a deeply troubled character. I think she has her flaws, and of course she has some troubles, but I think that's the whole idea of storytelling. You have to have obstacles in order for a story to work. You cannot write a story where a character does not go through a struggle of some sort or an obstacle of some sort. And I mean, not just one struggle, not just one obstacle, constantly until the end. Like, that's the whole like principle of drama. You have to have obstacles. So I think, of course, Emilia Perez, she's going to be flawed, and she's going to have to overcome physical obstacles, mental obstacles, obstacles in her life during the course of the film, and none of which are tragic. None of which are tragic. She goes from being a leader in her past life to a leader in her current life, and it's easy for her. She doesn't really face any discrimination in the film, and I would figure that is a good thing. Let's see. So-called good media painting us as these deeply troubled characters with tragic backstories. Emilia doesn't have a tragic backstory. Again, she was powerful in her backstory, facing insurmountable challenges. Her challenges are surmountable, or struggling with their circumstances. Emilia's rich, and she doesn't regret her decision of changing. The only thing she regrets for the most part is leaving her family behind. And most of the trans people I know or have met live fairly normal lives, myself included. So if I had to make one suggestion, it's to recognize that trans people are people and not to hyperfixate on their transness. And this is something, of course, I can relate to as a Black person. When, you know, I would love to see, or I do like to see when there are Black people in films and it doesn't hyperfixate on their Blackness, and it doesn't focus on it. If it's not a movie about like religion, then not religion. If it's not a movie about racism, or a movie that is like about civil rights, that's a period piece, I think it's not necessarily necessary to see to it that minorities, Black people in fiction have to get called the N-word, or have to get like bullied, or can't have white friends, or something like that, to hyperfixate on making sure you understand the Black experience. So not like hyperfixating on it being about Emilia being trans. It can be like in the background, but make the story about what the story is about, and not always coming back to the color of the skin or the fact that they are trans, right? This person continues to say, I honestly think the tendency to fall for liberal, trans-positive media to focus solely on the negative aspects about being trans perpetuates transphobia by suggesting that being trans is necessarily a negative thing that will make your life worse in every way, and we deserve to be pitied. It's not accurate and impedes the acceptance, understanding, and improvement of trans people in society. And I agree with this person. I can see where this person is coming from. And I think in the movie, Emilia doesn't exactly have like that negative experience, and her life really gets better. She's happy that she gets to be herself, and she's still rich, and she starts a new organization. She helps people find missing people. So I feel like there's that. Also, I looked into also the Ask Transgender subreddit, and I found this post, Why the Hate for Emilia Perez. As of the day that I'm filming this, it's 18 days old, and it is the 24th of January. Hi everyone, I'm looking here for some genuine answers, and I understand not everyone will agree with me, but I genuinely want to know, does the trans community really hate Emilia Perez? I watched the movie months ago at a festival and enjoyed it, flawed as it was. I will say I am not trans, but I'm non-binary and queer, so take my opinion with a grain of salt here. The way I viewed the film, it was about flawed people, and and that not everyone is perfect, even pre or post transition. It felt more like a story about not wanting to let go of those you love, even if not done the right ways, and making amends for past mistakes. One side character mentions that helping will never make up for the harm they caused, but it's a start to changing and being better. I don't think her story will resonate with every person transition, but the lead actress did create the character to mirror her own experience and feelings within the fictional story they were telling. I don't know if that's fact-checked or not, but maybe I missed some things in my viewing that made it offensive, and I would love to know. But so far, all I've seen is people saying they didn't consult any trans people when they did, and that's offensive, but not why. I will admit the sound going around from that one song is cringe, but camp and taken so far from its context. Thanks. So one of the plot points here is, one of the comments, the first comment, the big plot point is that she is using transition to escape her criminal past. She was hiding who she really was from her old family and her revealing her true identity in the finale of the movie. It treats her old self as her true identity and her real self as a mask, which is, frankly, a disgusting misrepresentation. So, wrong. In that she used her transition to escape her criminal past. That is not what she transitioned for in the very beginning, when the doctor was talking to, who was Manitas at the time. Manitas goes on to say that it was something that they wanted. They wanted this since they were a child, and they kind of just got put into their life, and they never got to get that chance to do what they want, and they considered killing themselves, and they were like, no, I want to at least try to live as myself before I do that. So it had nothing to do with being a criminal in the past, especially when Emilia still stayed in contact with drug kingpins. You know, Emilia still did that, so she wasn't exactly escaping from any criminal past. She just needed to fake her death, and she just wanted to try to live the life that she was meant to live since she was a kid. And so she wasn't ever really hiding who she was, just because she identifies herself as Jesse's husband at the end. I think it's obvious that Emilia knew that some bad things were happening, that she could likely die at the end of this. And obviously we know that Emilia regretted leaving her wife and kids behind. She missed them, and that's why she asked Rita, the lawyer, to bring her family back. And she was kind of, you know, pretending to be Manita's sister, so the kids' aunt and cousin, something. I'm confused about that part. But Emilia was basically pretending to be the aunt for the kids and not being their dad, now mother. Like, Emilia just never said anything. She couldn't, because Manitas was dead, right? And so basically Emilia just wanted to make amends before she died. She wanted the truth to be revealed before she died, and I think that's very, very understandable. It's basically, as the song was at the end, it was like, forgive me, forgive me. Emilia just wanted Jesse to know the truth before they ran out of time. And that's that. And someone sort of agreed. They were like, I think you're missing the plot here, actually. Did you even watch a movie? And yeah, that is that thread. I also, again, here are from the website Everyday Feminism, 7 transmedia tropes that need to stop. 1, being pegged as a deceiver, liar, or mentally unstable individual. I personally think that is false in the case of Emilia. I mean, Manitas was, for the most part, I think for the most part, it's wrong in the cases of Emilia. I mean, technically, Emilia was lying. I mean, not technically, but she was lying and deceiving them. But again, it kind of just goes with the story. It would have been a completely different film if Emilia transitioned with her family, and that's not the story that Jacques wanted to tell. He wanted to tell something emotionally gritty, which is his style. He wanted to tell something tragic, which is his style and his culture. So it makes sense that there had to be some sort of cause, some sort of conflict there, and that was it. It was just a result of, it was a result. It wasn't their, I guess, exact personality. It was just a consequence of Emilia's actions, is all. But if you believe that that is one thing, I mean, sure. But again, I do believe that a lot of films have lying in it. Like, basically, lying is one of those big tropes about people lie about who they are, and then in the end, the other person finds out and they get so upset. Happens a lot in romance. So I think it's just a very common thing that happens. I think it's just a general trope. And I also think that it would be untrue to never ever make a film that has a minority, a marginalized group, someone in a marginalized group as a deceiver or a liar, because those are just normal human, not every person is like this, but this is something that is very, very, very common as a human being. So you would expect for it to come up in a type of film like this. The second point is being used as a pamphlet. This is an issue because 1, there's more to a trans person than being trans. 2, not all trans people want some sort of medical transition. And 3, apparently elephants don't need to be discussed unless there's one in the room. And for me, this is like a complete mic drop. And it's like, that's like the whole point. I know some people were like, there is a review that I saw that people were like, they don't talk about like her full experience, and not every film needs that. And this film didn't need it. It was already, 2 hours long? It didn't need an extra 45 to an hour about how transitioning goes. But some people are mad about that. And again, can I speak on the trans experience? No, but I can speak on the Black experience, and I feel like, again, there's more to being Black than having racist people be racist to you. Period. 3, being only young and white and magically able to afford medical transition. Emilia was not young, Emilia was not white, and she was not magically able to afford transition. Done, done, and done. She had money. The non-consensual reveal. This is a hugely problematic in 2 ways, because 1, it is indeed non-consensual, thereby taking all of the trans person's rightful power in the situation and handing it over to the cis person, and 2, it suggests that there's something necessary to reveal even to people who shouldn't matter. Dying for a cis person, while Emilia does die in the end, she does not die for a cis person. It was more like a tragic accident, and she didn't die for anyone. She was just, again, ended up getting kidnapped for the consequences of her actions. So it wasn't dying for anyone. Dying in general. This is on the list. And this is something that I like to talk about because, again, there's this thing with Black people too. Always dying in the film, the token Black person, right? They die. But, you know, the thing about Emilia Perez is she was not some token minority character. She was the main character. The story was basically about her and her experience. So the main character died. And again, I'll just bring it back to tragedy. It is a tragic film, Jacques style. And it's just kind of sometimes, like, if it serves the story justly and you can explain why it is that way, I feel like it's fair. And again, and Emilia wasn't the only one who died. Jesse died and Gustavo died. So it wasn't even the single main character who got singled out. Audiard took 2 other characters with Emilia. So I feel like that is something definitely to consider in the arguments. And I also have here a 1-star review that from Letterboxd, and I had a lot to say about this when I read it. All right, let's start. You learn nothing about Emilia's relationship to womanhood outside of a minute of admiring herself post-surgery. Not necessarily. There is a number in London where she says, it was hard, but I'm happy. There is that, but then again, referring to one of those other rules, there's more to other, not rules, but tropes, unliked tropes. There's more to being trans than being trans and hyperfixating on it. So again, I think Audiard kind of followed that. He did not fixate on it. He included it here and there, but it was not a fixation. You learn nothing about Emilia's sentience or years of existing as a woman because her existence only matters in terms of her life pre-transition. She's never given a moment of real interiority or direction or purpose beyond her relationship with her pre-transition self. Direction or purpose beyond her relationship. I don't know about that. I think she has a purpose, the whole helping to find kids. I think she found a new purpose. She found a new purpose, and that was her purpose. She gets burnt alive after getting dead named and misgendered in the emotional climax of the movie, alongside her wife, who is also set ablaze before a memorializing song with the lyrics, "To she who will never come back, to she who kept her secret." Well, I had a lot to say about Jesse calling Emilia manitas and my husband and he. You have to realize that literally 3 minutes earlier, she just found out. And I think it's good that you're considering the trans reality, but you also have to consider the non-trans reality. And personally, as a non-trans person, I can speak to that reality. And I can also think that if I had just learned that my husband, who I thought was dead for the longest time, the man that I loved, was dead, and here is this woman telling my husband and me's past, and then I ask, who are you? Because how would you know that? And Emilia says Emilia, and at the same time, Jesse says manitas, and it's like she's like, you are the person that I knew, but not once did Jesse ever meet Emilia as her wife. So I feel like it's a little unreasonable to expect in 3 minutes for Jesse to see Emilia as Emilia instead of manitas, because all of Jesse's memories are tied to manitas, not to Emilia. She did not have time to process after this shootout, to process and replace manitas in her past with Emilia in her past. So that is just something to consider. Zoe Saldana. Saldana's character gets the children she wants, culminating an arc that started with Emilia saying she'd buy whatever father she wanted, which in turn perpetuates the nature of Emilia as not a woman but a man pretending. Now, for me, this feels like you're saying that trans women, or women in general can't be powerful, can't be rich, can't buy whatever they want. To me, that's what that says. And women can be powerful. They can be rich. They can buy their friends a husband if they wanted it. Because that's what friends do for each other, right? They give each other what they can give. They give each other love. And obviously, Emilia wanted Rita to stay around because she thought of Rita as a friend, and she just kind of wanted to bribe her. And women can bribe people, and yeah, evil. This film is hateful and cruel, demeaning, and not nearly trashy enough. It is a cluttered disaster, which I disagree. I think the film is very well structured. Personally, I think the film is in 4 parts. Part 1 is like the setup, and we are introduced to our characters and their daily lives, which that's like basically every film, except maybe some are told not linearly, but this is a linear story. So we get our setup, we meet our characters, we see them in their daily lives, and we have the inciting incident of Rita getting taken to meet Manitas and getting the proposal, and the story takes off from there. Part 2, I named Emilia Perez because that's when Emilia is transitioned, and we kind of get to see her. We don't, well, we do get to see her. We get to see her in her house. We get to see her interact once Jessie and her kids come back in that part. But the inciting incident in that part is meeting in London, meeting Rita back in London and saying, hey, I need you to bring the kids and Jessie back because I can't live without them. And it starts the Emilia Perez part 2. Just we're seeing Emilia. And then part 3 I call La Lucecita, I think, right? Yeah, La Lucecita. And the inciting incident is that when the lady hands the missing form, she's handing out the papers, the flyers at the tables, and she's saying my son went missing, and then we kind of see the La Lucecita chapter, that part where she builds this organization. And I think the reason that she started it is, I think some people kind of said it was something about being random, and it was like a hard transition, but random, something like that. But I think she did it out of guilt, one, because she did it to her family. Emilia did it to Jessie and her children. She disappeared, she faked her death, and she killed Manitas off completely and left her family to think that Manitas was dead, but she's still here as Emilia, and she is feeling bad for that. I think she needs to reckon that. And then I think she's also feeling guilty for what she might have done in her past. As Manita, she might have killed in her past. Well, I think not might. She did. I think she admitted to it. She says, I do not lack murder. So I believe she has killed in her past, creating other people to go missing, and she just wants to sort of just find a way to just get rid of that. And she kind of even says it when Rita brings it up. She was like, do you ever think about what Manitas did? And Emilia's like, no, not here. And then I do think about it. And I think that's she wants to do better. She wants to do better. And then part 4, the climax and the resolution, and that the inciting incident of that, it takes us into a very, 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 very exciting ending. The last 30 minutes, they go by so quick. I don't know if I mentioned, but each part is about the same time, about half an hour. And we are just propelled when she grabs Jessie, and she's like, you're not taking my kids. And then it was like, they're my kids, right? Not yours. And then Jesse bolts. And it just propels us into an amazing fourth chapter, fourth act. I'm not exactly sure what it should be called, but that's very, 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 I mean, I don't think it was poorly structured or a mess. It is a cluttered disaster that pivots from disgusting musical numbers. I think they were probably talking to the doctor, about the doctor one, which, or all of them. I don't know how all of them were disgusting. But she didn't like the musical they didn't like the musical numbers. And personally, I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan much either of the music, but it was so easy for me to ignore that I guess it just couldn't really get through to me. And they say, too dreary and underwritten cartel drama. Well, cartel drama that is underwritten. I beg to differ, because the movie is not about the cartel. That is in the background. This is in the background. That's in the background. That's not what the movie is about. The movie isn't about cartel. That's just the support. That's just like our B story, our C story, our E story. Like that's not even a thing. Like it's the fact that Emilia goes missing and they still have connections. So yeah, and obviously Emilia invited drug kingpins to the La Lucecita gala or whatever it was. Like, she's still deep in it, but like, it's not underwritten. It's just in the background, and it makes sense that it follows the film through the end, because I'm pretty sure Gustavo worked with Manitas, and so I'm not sure, but I think at least he was in the same business, so of course it follows. And then it goes to inexplicable Oscar bait weepiness. I wish they would have explained. And it's too unimaginative and boring to commit to being fully trashy. The second act of this picture is so boring, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would have actually respected a bit more if it committed entirely to the grotesque musical elements, because at least that would be an ethos. Its subliminal nasty transphobia is sickening to watch and made me feel deeply upset. I've already addressed transphobia. It is, well, I'm not sure if I described it as transphobia, but the whole Reddit thread and the little list, that was that. And it is ashamed of the trashy transphobic musical elements that it brings to the table in the first place, and abandons them and its ostensible protagonist in the pursuit of tarnished respectability, which somehow reflects how little it sees its protagonist as a woman, even harder than the vaginoplasty song. It is utterly contemptible. Can't wait for it to win Best Picture, because the world is evil and stupid. I won't agree with that. At least the climax looks like the final boss fight in Uncharted: Drake's Fortune. All right, and it got 2,044 likes, and people were like, perfect review. One of the worst endings I've ever seen. You nailed it. Perfectly described my feelings. Thank you. Great review. Terrible review. This film isn't transphobic in the slightest. Someone disagreed. Think you should rewatch the movie. Wider lens. You're thinking way too liberal. Emilia insists that her ex-wife calls her by Emilia the second she meets her post-transition. And her ex is literally having the most traumatic day. Of course, she dead names her after the reveal. It's not supposed to be correct. It's a character's ignorance. Doesn't mean the film itself. A character's ignorance doesn't mean the film itself is ignorant. Emilia was haunted by her past, but was living her happiest life after being trans. It's simple. The comments below kind of agree kind of with what I was saying about it being traumatic. All right, what is more? We've been here for nearly an hour now. So let's see. I actually don't think I need to read this. I also found an article on Screen Rant, Emilia Perez, Controversy and Backlash Explained, and it kind of just goes through some of these things. It's criticized for its problematic trans character arc. I think Emilia Perez is innately dealing with hot-button topics of trans representation and equality in modern society, which naturally runs the risk of sparking controversy and or backlash. While the movie has garnered a great deal of festival acclaim, it simultaneously is facing criticism for the alleged mishandling of its trans main character, played by Gascon, a trans actress. The baseline criticism is that Emilia Perez can be seen as being quite limited and superficial in the depiction of Emilia as a trans woman. A more critical perspective would argue that her portrayal is problematic, especially considering Emilia becomes a completely different person after her gender assignment surgery. I disagree that she becomes a different person. She's a leader at the beginning. She's a leader at the end. She says bingo at the beginning. She says bingo at the end. She's not completely different, and she's gonna be a little different, but of course, leaving your family behind, getting them back, but can't say that you are the mother of the kids or anything like that. I think it has an effect on you, and it just makes you need to have like a different outlet. Emilia essentially has a villain to hero transformation from the evil and heartless Manitas into a virtuous and saint-like community figure, which again is untrue. During La Lucecita, at the end of that part, I think she does have a moment where she snaps. She's not perfect. She's not virtuous and saint-like, and I think that's a matter of perspective, because I'm sure while Manitas, they looked up to Manitas. They did, and again, leader. In the beginning, leader in the end. It's not really a villain to hero. Manitas was never portrayed as a villain. You just assume this from their job. You just assume that Manitas was a villain because he was part of a cartel. But they don't actually portray it that way. We don't even really see him in that environment. And when we do see him as Manitas, he's being a great father with his wife and kids, and they're looking at the stars, the shooting stars. So is Emilia really a different person than Manitas? Emilia Perez uses trans tropes and feels uninformed about trans realities. I feel like I covered that. Emilia Perez releases in a year with powerful trans stories and movies, which people are upset that some of those movies did not get the same attention, and I feel like that maybe that's what people are more angry about than anything. I think they're angry that a cis French man told a story of a Mexican trans woman, when other trans media made by trans people did not get the same attention or the same respect, or the same popularity, right? But they kind of finished the article by saying Emilia Perez could still break down some barriers because Carla Sofia Gascon is on track to be the first openly trans person to win an Oscar. She has become the first trans actress to receive an Oscar nomination and could be the first trans person then to win. So I think at least maybe something has definitely come of it. And yes, now there are other criticisms about the Mexican representation. I spent a lot of time on the trans representation because it was the most that I could find, but I did watch the credits, and I couldn't, because I don't speak French. I don't read French. I can't understand it for the most part. Well, yeah, um, I don't so I don't know exactly, like, because you know in the credits they tell you who they're crediting. There's like a category. I did notice though in some of the music categories, like the instrument players, it looked like their names were of Spanish descent. So I know in some way, shape, or form that there were people of Spanish descent that have Hispanic or Latin names and last names that were working on this film. As far as consultation, I am not completely certain. People are angry that it was not filmed in Mexico, but I remind people that filmmaking is not just an art. Unfortunately, it is a business as well. It costs money, and I'm sure, I would hope, that the reason why it was filmed in France has something to do with money, budget, or taxes, because that's what goes on first and foremost. You know, to move a crew all the way to France, to move a crew from France to Mexico, I'm sure is very expensive. And not only does our director, I don't believe, speak Spanish, I have heard that there was a translator on set. It could have been very difficult for him to work with an all Spanish-speaking crew, even though he had a translator. It could have just been difficult. And again, on a business perspective, I do believe that it would probably be more efficient, so he could direct the crew in French and then have his translator help with the actors and actresses, and stuff like that. He said it was inauthentic to Mexico and basic, and it perpetuated some Mexican stereotypes, and that I can understand. But then again, I don't really think that maybe the Mexican stereotypes that were maybe portrayed, I don't think they were, again, in your face. They weren't hyper fixated on. I think for the most part the story was about Emilia, and everything else was in the background. It was leveled, it was tiered, but it was in the background. And then I also heard a lot about the accents, which again, that can be very, very bothersome. But I feel like it has to be something that is forgivable, because if you think about, they're British people doing American accents, or Americans doing British accents, and sometimes it's not always great, or Americans doing French accents or Spanish accents. It's not always great, and again, it is definitely valid. It's a valid critique. It does subtract points from the overall score of the film, but it is something that I feel like should be able to be forgiven, especially because at the very least, these actors and actresses, are Spanish speaking or of Spanish speaking descent. So it at least it wasn't a Mexican story involving, let's say Americans in place of Mexicans, and Americans speaking Spanish, and by that I just kind of mean not like Hispanic Americans or Latin Americans, just like, let's say white or black Americans, cosplaying as like Mexican. I think at least some sensitivity was brought there. Other critiques had to do with the color grading and like the colors in general, and that the direction was flat, and the songs were bad. I think I already mentioned that, the songs were, they were okay, not moving that much, and you know, I'm not a huge musical watcher, so I don't know, but again, I think those are just like true and valid critiques, but kind of small aspects to the overall story. And so, all in all, all in all, I think Emilia Perez is a story about loss. I think it's just a common thing here. I think it's a story about loss. Others have said regret, but personally, I just think it's a story about how just loss. And I think it at least is like a common occurrence in the film, and that's why I kind of think that's what it's about, because, you know, Jesse and Emilia lose manitas. The kids in the end lose their mother. They lose Jesse. There's losses of life, but I think maybe again it's about gaining things, because we gain once we, in La Lucecita chapter, we gain closure, and at least the Rita, she gains a family, so I think it's just about just kind of raw, like life. You do lose a lot in life, but it typically, you know, you just have to keep going, and then, you know, you might gain other things. So I think it's a story about loss, and I know that a lot of things just rubbed people the wrong way, and I know that if that happens in a film, it's really hard to gain the audience back. And when there is so much dissonance on something, it's very easy to pick it apart more, pick apart every single thing that you did not like because you already hate it and so many other people hate it, and you're just like, yes, let's hate together because it feels good to be seen and heard, and it feels good to be a part of a group. And I just think that, yeah, that's just kind of an effect of just the little things adding up. And but when I watched this film, personally, I just saw well-paced, basic beats, and for the most part, that's all it takes for me. I see setup and payoff. I see intention and obstacles. I see characterization, and I see, you know, things coming full circle, things that are in the first part that come back to the last part, things, you know, nothing is like a surprise. Nothing just happens like, oh, someone's here to save the day. None of that happens when you get that a lot in films sometimes, where it's just like, oh, here's a random person that just shows up to save the day, and that's not how this film is. And I just really do appreciate it, that I don't feel like anything is convenient for any of these characters, and not even Rita gaining her kids at the end, becoming the guardian of Emilia's kids, Emilia and Jesse's kids. I don't think that is convenient, because at what cost? It was not convenient. Rita lost Emilia in the end, so it wasn't very convenient. So I think Audiard does a great job of setting up the characters' ordinary lives perfectly and quick. Money is a motivator, which is very, very commonly used in films to get characters to do something, to get that inciting incident, to get that impetus. And Rita does initially start working with manitas for the money, and she gains Emilia as a friend because of it, and that's fine. And I think when discussing film, especially objectively, the storytelling does come first and foremost, and everything else is icing on the cake. It's cosmetic. We know this because we should be able to follow a film without the sound, and when we turn on the sound, we should have good dialogue that reveals characters and moves the plot forward, and good sound quality, followed by, you know, all the cinematography, and then other things on top of that. So yes, of course, everyone's distaste and dislike for this movie are fully valid, and they're fully valid, but I think some things are more nuanced than others, and perhaps these opinions are most important in their subjective opinion, but a subjective opinion is, to me, I think, I didn't like it. Not, it was a bad movie because I didn't like it. I believe an objective film opinion keeps as close to the facts and the rules of drama as possible. It is clear by most of the common criticisms that the issues with Emilia Perez, while important and glaring, are muscle on the bones of what makes a story, well, a well-told story. And yes, it is the difference between making an okay film and a great one. To make a great film, you basically gotta get everything right, and to be honest, it's pretty hard. And for me, the things that I appreciated was the use of bingo, which I think I mentioned. Bingo from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. The Epiphania song. It includes a lot of close-ups of Emilia's hands with the red nails on her fingers, her red painted nails. And, you know, in our last act, our last part, we should know without confusion who the fingers belong to, because we just saw them. We spent a whole number looking at Emilia do this and that, so we know whose fingers those are, and that's good. That's great storytelling. And I love the scene where it was like the split screen, two-way and three-way. And it was Jessie on one side and Emilia on the other side, and Rita in the middle. And when she was responding to, as if you recall, they were talking at the same time. When Rita was responding to Emilia, she would hold the phone here, and then when she was responding to Jessie, she would switch sides, and that's like, it's the little things, you know. So tell me, I'm curious, what's the most important aspect to a movie to you when you watch and or review it, and how does that influence, if at all, your opinion of this film, Emilia Perez by Jacques Audiard? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Hello fellow storytellers and story lovers. I want to thank you kindly for watching my video. If you want to see more from me, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at MelodyCLane. If you're looking for someone to help you develop your story, I'm available. You can find more information on my website. The link is in the description below.